Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the fifth episode of the Markademics Podcast. And I'm super excited because we have Jem Bourouh here with me, and I hope that I've pronounced your surname correctly this time. If not, please correct me. But I'm very excited because we're going to be discussing product market fit issues and nightmares that are coming up for e-commerce stores and e-commerce businesses in general. And Jem is a person that I've been following for quite a long time. And Karl Weische, who was part of the third episode of the Markademics Podcast, got us introduced. And first of all, thank you, Jem, for coming to the episode.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
And let's get it started. First, I always ask this because we know each other in the field a little bit, but there's still so many people around us that don't know who Jem is. And I think that everyone should know who Jem is. So for the people that don't know you, I will just briefly introduce you that you're the person, you are the person behind the Google Ads agency Adcubator. You spend more than $310 million profit with great profitability with the agency. You are head of growth of Accelerated with Karl Weische. You're part of different masterminds, and yes, you're right now in Bali, but you can see Jem all around the world these days. And what do people don't know about Jem from that introduction? What should people know more about what you do when they meet you?
Yeah, I feel like a common misconception that people have about me is that we're just running ads, I guess. But we're also running our own brands. We're running 4 brands. We're trying to, or we're aiming for 50 million revenue this year.
Okay.
We're a bit under pace right now. We're way under pace right now, but it's because we're hiring a lot right now, just so we're able to fulfill the growth. But yeah, I've had an info product where we did 7 figures in the first year, just solely from paid ads, which was also in the niche of how to make money online, e-commerce, drop shipping, brand building, that kind of stuff. So yeah, you summarized it pretty well of what I'm doing. Yeah, spot on.
So I would only add that he's one of the opinion leaders, I would say, in our e-commerce world right now, and I'm sure that this episode is going to be quite interesting for everyone who is looking into not making the mistakes that many brands have done, because we'll be discussing product market issues and product market nightmares today. And topics that come up in the episode just naturally. So, Jem, wanted to ask you from your experience, because there are quite a lot of misconceptions when it comes to product market fit. But if you are an e-commerce store owner, how would you even just define product market fit in the beginning? Like, how would you define it from the get-go?
Yeah, product market fit really, in my opinion, the word says it all, because you have a product, whether it is physical or digital, and you have a market, right? And it either fits or it doesn't. And if you have a good product market fit, of course, you're able to validate that product by being profitable, by being able to scale that respective product, whether it is physical or digital, and just by having a great acceptance of the product. And of course, if you're taking a look at all these unicorns and all these humongous companies like Tinder and Bumble and all these other ones, or even Instagram, then of course you have an insane product market fit, or even ChatGPT right now, because the use case is just there, and the adoption that we have of these respective products is just incredible, because everyone is just like, we need to hop onto this, right? And if you have a server going down on Instagram, for example, everyone is talking about it on Twitter for after 10 minutes, right? And why is that? Well, because the adoption of the product is just so enormously there that everyone is using the product, and they cannot live without the product, right? Mm-hmm. So these are like signs of good product market fit, but essentially establishing product market fit, what it means is being able to sell a certain thing, or having an acceptance and a need of a certain thing of the respective audience, of the ICP, of the ideal customer.
Very nice. And since you're mainly working with 7 and 8 figure e-com brands around the world, wanted to ask you this. What's the typical mistakes that you are seeing when these companies are growing? Because when they're growing, they're probably trying to do many new things in order to get into the next milestone. What are the main, let's say, 3 to 4 mistakes that these companies are making in terms of product market fit?
Yeah, it's an amazing question because I've talked to my good friend Davey Fogarty about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and
Shout
we
out
were
to
talking,
David.
yeah, we were talking about the ends of matrix, where it's like on the essentially you're trying to validate things and scale or define scalability by having existing markets and an existing product or a new product into product development, which would be bottom right of the matrix, or you have full diversification by going into a new market with a new product, right, which is like top right of the matrix. And it's super interesting to see because many people, especially in the dropshipping community, they are running just basic products in existing markets and potentially come up with new angles, right? Which is
Yeah.
also changing the product market fit, or changing the ICP, because at the end of the day, by another angle, you are approaching a different customer or a different prospect. And these customers might be totally different from each other if you compare angle 1 and angle 2, for example, with each other.
Yeah.
However, a big mistake that many people do is not even talk to their customers and not ask questions, right? Like, how are you able to? So let's say you are selling, you're making like 500K a month with your store, right? Like 7 figures a year. How do you want to scale if you don't even know what the people want, what your customers want, right? Because at the end of the day, of course, you can only be so good with marketing that you're expanding. But if you do not have the right product market fit, you're kind of tapping in the dark and do not understand what is going to hit and what things are going to increase the hit rate of what you are doing, because you simply tap in the dark and have a blindfold on your head and do not understand what you are actually doing, but just guessing in the dark, so to say.
Okay. What are the principles that you're looking into? For example, even with your e-com stores or the brands that you're consulting, what are the main principles based on which you start a new product line?
First of all, in my opinion, there either needs to be a super passionate community behind that. However, what we prefer is just products that have mass appeal and that we can market to the mass, right? In my opinion, there's like 3 different type of ways you can market something. It's either mass appeal, it's an emotional product, or it just solves a problem, right? These are the main 3 things. However, if you're able to combine 2 out of these 3, for example, it has a mass market appeal and it solves a problem, amazing. If it solves all of these 3, even better. If it doesn't have mass market appeal, then you always have to think about the ticket size, because of course you don't need to sell 100,000 units if your ticket price is like 10,000. Right?
Yeah, because you're
However,
exclusive this way.
yeah, definitely. But if we're talking about like AOV below 100, of course you need mass market appeal. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to scale, because at some point you have tapped the market and, well, it's essentially you have to come up with new things, right? And this is when we're talking again about the ends of matrix, because you have to either move into a new market or you have to develop a full new product where you, again, have to establish product market fit in order to see if the people want it and what the people want, right?
And you've probably spoken with David for his own brand, the Udi. What did they do differently? How did they make it a global brand, starting from almost from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, they first of all, they were there at the right time, and they were just able. First of all, their marketing is super good. They had a new product that no one ever has had before. And because they didn't just do product development in terms of customizations, they created an entirely new product, right? So no matter the market that they tapped into, it was a new market because the product was completely new and created from scratch. And I don't know the exact way of how Davey started and scaled the store. However, I know that he's selling in multiple geos and is not only selling into one geo, right? So,
He's everywhere.
For sure, yeah, he's all around the world, and this is like one of the keys, right? Because he's omnipresent. He's always able to come up with new concepts. He's always, well, essentially creating new partnerships with different companies where it's like, oh man, they've just partnered with this company. Oh, they've partnered with this company, right? So that's one way how to do it, because he's in the markets. I'm not too sure if he's going to open new markets, but he's always creating new products, right? And this is how he can really diversify and just stay relevant and always create a new product market fit and be still relevant for the existing customers. And of course, increase the lifetime value and everything that comes alongside with it.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing. You don't typically, when it comes to the Udi, you don't really buy like again and again. Like, why would you buy again and again if it from duty? Like, you don't need 5 Udis. It's not like a shirt that you're going out with. But it's still interesting how a person like that is and a business like that is making sure that they're trying to get as good retention as possible from everywhere. And yeah, even like my colleagues here in Bulgaria have bought the Udi just because like it's so awesome, and it does work. It's a great present for girlfriends. But what you mentioned is that you need a super passionate niche, like super passionate people to back it up. You need mass appeal, so people to all around the world to actually need this, to want to have this, and timing. And like timing is extremely underappreciated typically when it comes to brands. But from your brand, what are the bigger mistakes that you've done in the past that you shouldn't have done?
Yeah, not really think about what the customer wants. So, like the number one thing is not establishing product market fit. And again, we were sometimes moving inside of the black box, not knowing what the customer is want, right? Because if you're not creating an entirely new product, then of course your product is already being sold all around the world. So how can you really differentiate yourself from not only the competition, but how can you make adjustments to the product that you are fixing problems that the product might have, where the return rate are high, where the chargeback rate might be high, or because the customer support tickets are just flooding in. And once you really understand all of these different things, you can make these customizations. You can target certain angles, because how do you get to know that? You get to know that by either receiving all of the messages within your customer support team, right? Or you ask your customers, you talk to your customers, you send emails, might even, and this is what a lot of these software companies are doing, right? They just call up their customers, and high ticket ones, they ask how was the experience? Was it good? Was it bad? What was missing? Or why did you churn? And all that kind of stuff, right? So by really understanding what your customer wants at the end of the day, you are able to move the needle into the right direction. So you're able to not only make more money, but also have less issues and are able to scale more and dominate your competitors at the end of the day.
And that's quite interesting because literally both in the previous episodes with Sebastian and with Karol Weische, the number one thing that all of them were mentioning was that ask questions to your customers. Ask them what they liked and what they didn't like, and make changes accordingly to it. It was like their biggest hack of like how to make more money, basically. It's just ask.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you always see these Hotjar surveys on the bottom of a page, for example, because and again, this kind of goes back to CRO, by understanding what a company does, or not what a company does, but what your customers want, and by understanding what they are doing, you really get to make these changes and do these split tests, these A/B tests, to really increase performance at the end of the day, which is what ultimately matters. And again, establish this product market fit even better, because once you have found product market fit, of course, that's amazing, but there's always ways on how to make it better and how to really position yourself better with your brand or with your product or with your service, whatever it is.
Very nice. And something new that I'm seeing lately with my agency and with my brand as well is that there are many new startups that are not just bootstrapping with their own money, but they're getting venture capital from here and there. They're starting off with pretty good budgets with 5, 10, 15 million for just trying out a new product, a new idea. For them, they don't have the customers. They don't have like anything. They just have funding. They just have money, and they're starting to throw it on different stuff. What are the biggest issues that they're facing? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that they're making?
Yeah, I mean, we're working with a lot of VC brands as well that have gotten, and we're not speaking of like 1 or 2 shitty million, but like 80 million, 160 million, 250 million,
Okay.
like brands that have done their Series B, Series B, Series D, and like have a lot of backing and important decision makers like BlackRock and other people, JP Morgan, for example. So
Okay.
one thing that we're seeing is, and of course these aren't companies that are just starting out, but these are companies that have already been selling things, and whenever the VCs and them are having a talk and a meeting, essentially what it revolves around, and this is the most stupid thing in the entire VC game, it's in order to be really attractive for VCs, you need to grow as fast as possible. And how do you
Yes.
grow as fast as possible? Well, you need to grow unprofitably. And why do you need to grow unprofitably? Well, if you are profitable, you have money, you have cash flow that you could have invested into acquiring even more customers, increasing the customer list, increasing, well, the retention that you have, increasing the MRR, increasing the lifetime value and everything that comes alongside with it, right? And therefore buy more impressions, buy more brand awareness, and well, essentially increase revenue, which is important for these VCs. And you know, it's not about, oh, they need to be profitable. And this is why the entire VC game is so broken, because they do not care about profitability, whereas we as as bootstrap dropshippers, for example, in the
Yeah.
very beginning, we don't have this outside capital to rely on, so we need to be profitable first purchase. And it, like, in my opinion, it simply does not make any sense to be unprofitable first purchase unless we're talking about supplements and you have your
Yeah.
payback within the second month. But then again, you need to really make sure that you have your cash flow and all of the budgeting and the projections that you have 100% spot on. Because if you don't, and you're buying purchasers unprofitably, and you don't have your math figured out and all the forecasting, next thing you know, you're running out of money, you don't have any money, the cohorts are just burning away, and the people are just not retaining for long enough that you're eventually making money, right? So I understand that some people buy customers unprofitably. However, for my own brands, I would not, unless I would perhaps, and again, there is like a very slim chance that I would do it because it depends on the use case.
Yeah.
However, if I'd move into supplements, into CPG, anything like that. But then again, it always depends on the respective market situation, who your competitors are, how much they are able to spend, and essentially how big they are capitalizing on the spend that they have, and if they're able to move faster just because of their unprofitable growth, so to say. But yeah, super interesting topic.
In that regard, if you're a business owner and you're looking for VC capital right now, should you do it, and in what cases should you do it?
Man, it's a good question. I feel like giving away equity, giving away percentage is, generally speaking, never a bad thing. And it really depends on why you are trying to raise. If you're trying to raise just for the sole amount, just for the sole reason of having capital, of course, sure, do it. If you don't have money, if you don't know how to come up with capital, if you don't have friends, family, bank, sure, get an investor. At the end of the day, it's less risky than trying to go into debt, whatever. Like you're risking the money of the venture capitalist or the investor, the angel, of whoever it is, the advisor. So of course, if you need the money, or if you need the knowledge or the network of that person, because you know, okay, I might give away 20%. However, if we're gonna make $1 million instead of 100K, I'm still, like, at the end of the day, I'm still gonna be left with more money, right? And
Yeah.
this is what matters. It's MBA, money in your bank account.
Quite nice. What are the mistakes that people are typically making from your experience in raising capital?
Man, I feel like, especially if we're talking about pre-orders,
Okay.
because this is like the only use case I could think of right now, right? Because I've never raised any money for any of my ventures.
Okay.
I've only invested money into other brands or agencies such as Carl's and Lars's. However, instead of trying to come up with a lot of capital, what some people should do instead is just not fundraising, but do pre-orders and say, hey, like this is the time, this is the date when the product will be will be done. You need to have a proper pipeline. It's kind of like an NFT project at the end of the day, right? You need to have a roadmap. Everyone needs to understand the roadmap. It needs to be very clear on what you're doing, and the product needs to be unique, and it needs to have utility, right? So you could compare the roadmap of an NFT project really onto fundraising on Kickstarter or whatever it is. And a friend of mine, I think he fundraised or he sold $12 million in pre-orders.
Oh, wow.
And the product has still not shipped, and it's been 2 years. But because of
Oh,
the
wow.
roadmap, this is what I have on top of my head. It might be 3 years, it might be 1 year. I think it was 2 years last time we talked, which was a month ago. So I think 2 years is pretty accurate, but I'm not 200% fixed on that, right? Anyhow, 2 years, imagine you have $12 million, euros, whatever it is, in pre-orders. Like, man, you have so much money to do R&D and to just, because by selling this thing on Kickstarter, you have validated product market fit because people want this because it's so unique. People are not going to buy something or invest into something, especially if the delivery time is in the next 2 years, unless they are very convinced of not only the roadmap, but the product itself and the problem it solves, and all of the competitors that are in the respective space that are kind of opposing the company that is on Kickstarter or what's the other platform called?
Indiegogo.
Yeah,
We're
Indiegogo.
actually, we're actually going to be doing with one of my brands. We're going to do a Kickstarter campaign in May. So it's actually a very hot topic for us in the team right now.
Love it. Super, super relevant. Yeah, interesting. I think, do you have a budget for how much you want to spend? Because you should just run Facebook ads straight to that campaign. I've never done it myself, but this is what my friend did, so I'm pretty sure if the product is good, then essentially...
Yeah, we want to launch one of our new products first, not to launch it on our e-com store. We want to launch it first on Kickstarter, and together all of that, because it's quite unique compared to all of the other ones. Nice. So that's why we're doing it as a whole separate thing. First being on Kickstarter, then maybe a little bit on Indiegogo, because the difference is that on Indiegogo you can continue after, even after your campaign is over on Kickstarter, you can continue the same campaign on Indiegogo immediately. So it's an interesting thing, but it's a whole nother topic. It's a huge one as well. But getting back to this, quite interesting. Right now, are you mainly working with German companies, or you're working with the agencies? Are you focusing on German companies or in or around the world? Because I wanted to ask you some more questions about the different markets.
Yeah, so it's mainly US, but we have a lot of European companies that are not only in Germany, but are really internationalized and have 8, 10, 12 different markets open. So we really get to see not only how consumer behavior differentiates between the US market and the German market, but also like Germany and Spain and all these things. Whereas the differences that you have within, and I'm just going to say consumer psychology and behavior within the EU is way different than the difference that you have between Germany or the EU and the US, especially if we're talking about these, scarcity marketing, for example, and being really, and creating a lot of urgency.
That's exactly what where I was heading towards. If I have a German brand, I've scaled up really well in Germany or in France or in Italy. What do I do first to get all around Europe and then maybe to the US, or how do you do it? Like, what's typically the path that the successful brands are doing, and what's different? Like, what changes?
First of all, I feel like it depends on the logistics and how it's set up. Because if you have a 3PL in Europe, or if you're let's say you have a 3PL in Europe, what makes more sense, opening Europe or the US? If you open the US, you need a totally different 3PL, potentially, but the setup to get everything from Europe to the US, if you have a 3PL in Europe, and the stock there is way harder as opposed to, or it just doesn't make sense, because it's more cost efficient to sell to Europe instead, or the EU, and open it or have a contractor like a 3PL in the US and just have another batch of goods that you are going to send them by container, right? And it always depends on where the brand is really starting out. If it's a German company, of course, what are they going to do? They're going to open the Austrian market, next thing you know, because they're speaking German too. It's some weird German they're speaking. Next thing you know, they open the Swiss market. and potentially things that are around. They're probably not going to open a Polish market, but go to France.
But that's interesting. What's the difference? The difference in the buyer psychology, in the consumer behavior between, let's say, you're already successful in Germany. Maybe a lot of people know you in Germany, but then you have zero brand awareness in France, and it's a different country, even though it's very close. But it's a different country and it works in a different way. What should you be shifting in your product strategy in order to get into that new market? Like, what are the main things?
If we're talking about e-com, it can be at least what we're doing. We're pretty much doing it one-to-one, but we're just doing it in, of course, local languages and making sure that there's like no slang or anything that you have from the German language that is in French. And what's also important is you need to make sure that you have, and I mean, it really doesn't relate to consumer psychology, but you need to have all of the payment methods and all of the payment processors ready that they are using in France. For example, if you're selling to Sweden, it does not make sense to sell to Sweden if you do not have Klarna.
Yeah.
Why? Well, Klarna is from Sweden, and 95% of the entire population pays with Klarna or Swish, which is like their mobile processing thing. Where, you know, if you have a Swedish social security number, you get Swish, and you can pay from your phone instead of with you know, tapping your card or whatever. So you just tap your phone on Swish instead. But in the EU, especially in Germany, people are more cautious, and if there's a mistake, they're always speaking up. They're very loud about things. They're always complaining, right? As opposed to the US, where, of course, people are, I'd say, the education in Europe is better than the US. So sometimes the responses you're getting are a bit weird and off. Let's just put it that way. And of course, like, if people buy something, they're not really as inclined as German people to figure something out if there is an issue with a product, for example, or send it back. Because what many of these dropshippers are doing, they're sending shit from China. It's total trash quality, especially all of these people that are doing fashion dropshipping. And then they're like, oh, you can send it back to our Hong Kong warehouse. And of course, it's not a great customer experience because the cost of sending something back from Germany to Hong Kong.
It's probably more than what you paid.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't really make sense, right? So in Germany and especially Europe, you just need to be very customer centric. Not saying you shouldn't be that in the US, but you need to be a lot in the EU and be, well, very reactive. And you need to really understand that if there's an issue, you need to fix it, because otherwise there's going to be more issues created as opposed to, well, money that you have, right? So the faster you fix problems in Europe, EU, the faster you can respond to certain things and act and just be proactive and not reactive about things. It's very important. So yeah, just like coming back to the point of really Germany and France, there's no clear thing that we have seen where it's like, oh, there's like this huge difference, right? At the end of the day, what we are doing, we're looking at what the competitors are doing. And of course, like if we're talking about Japan, for example, the stores that they have, they look completely different. Like it's not like your typical German website, right? There's like, of course, there's people running advertorials in Germany on native or even Facebook and everything, but in the US, it's way more common, right? Especially DSP, and I'm not talking display, but I'm talking programmatic advertising. So everything that you see on all of these weird websites, not taboo.
It still works in the US like hell. Like it's because they're used to all of these pages, and you look into it, you feel like, damn, this is so scammy, because you're European and you're like, damn, I would never click in Europe on an ad like that. But in the States, it's still, there's like 10% of the population that will just buy from anything like that.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Quite interesting, because you're traveling a lot around the world. And are you seeing some developments and like some openings right now from the developing markets, maybe in Asia, maybe in South America? Do you see anything like that? And what can US and EU companies do in order to get into those markets?
I've heard that the South American market, or like Middle American market, if we're talking about Mexico, is quite interesting. I haven't been there I've been to Mexico, but I haven't, bought anything online.
Yep.
I've heard there's good opportunities coming up here. However, especially in Singapore, especially in Indonesia, it's a bit harder to get into these markets because you need to, especially if we're talking about Indonesia. Indonesia is the fourth or fifth biggest country in the entire world. The population is like, 230 million inhabitants.
Yep.
It's humongous, and it's not like what people would expect from the US if they're like, people from the US probably couldn't even name 7 countries in Europe, right? But if we're talking about Indonesia, like no one really knows it's this huge country. So,
Yep.
and at the end of the day, it's still a third world country, but especially in these third world countries, because they are so big, people have money. It's not like because it's a third world country, there's only trash on the street and everything is dirty and no one has money. There are people who have proper jobs. There are people who have businesses, right? Like, how do you think the entire economy and society really works here? Like, there are people who have money and people are spending money. And here I'm sometimes getting ads on these star card maps, where you can buy a star and name it, and then you get the certificate, which has been around in other parts of the world for like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, especially if you talk about 2019, 2020. So people are really catching up with the e-com here, and they're really trying to make it. I even get ads on info products, on how to run TikTok ads, how to run Facebook ads, but it's all in Bahasa. It's all in Indonesian language, right? Like one of the languages at least. So they're selling their info products here. They're selling stuff here on their own Shopify websites, actually. But again, like the barrier to really, because it's not like the highest class of marketing. Because I've talked a bit of shit about the US, but the US is number one if we're talking about marketing. Everything that US does, EU always does 2 years later.
Absolutely.
Think about UGC, think about AGC, think about everything else, editorials.
I even see right now bridge pages, like Alex Fedotov is preaching about bridge pages for 3 years, and I'm seeing European companies starting to do bridge pages now, and it's starting to work actually for some.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we like what I'm seeing is that if you are able to enter, and I don't know the exact requirements because I haven't fiddled around in that a lot, but we're planning to enter Indonesia with a brand at some point of time, not right now, not this year, maybe next year. But if you are really able to have everything properly aligned and streamlined in terms of operations and fulfillment for that respective country, then man, like you're really able to properly scale, because we have the knowledge of the US, we have the knowledge of EU countries essentially, and what we're going to do with that is you could go into a third world country like Indonesia, like an emerging market, and just incredibly crazy scale a business there. Yeah.
Quite interesting. Well, to summarize so far, when it comes to a product, you need a super passionate niche. You need to make sure that there's enough people that want this, especially if you're selling something for less than $100 in AUV. The timing is crucial, but also when it comes to the markets, when you're getting to a new market, for sure, make sure that everything's translated and written in a way that the local person will like it and enjoy it and feel trust in it, basically. Because if it's written in the way that it will sound nice in German but doesn't sound well in French, then you're basically making the French guy just not trust you. In that regard, what do you see in business owners as the main things that are that are making them not grow? What are the biggest objections in their heads that are just some thoughts that are typically stopping them from growing?
Thinking that they know it all and not being able to look left and right, not being able to take feedback, and not really trying to open up a new opportunity, but being so fixated on what they are doing and trying to not iterate, not try something new, but really just plainly raise the budget in the ads manager. It doesn't work like that.
What are because that's if we put it into context from your scenarios, how does it typically look like when you're seeing a person like that? How are they acting? What's going on? What are their words when they're doing this?
I think it's a lot of scarcity mindset, that they're like, oh, like, and this is also from an agency perspective, right? People are saying, oh, like, I need to think about it, even if it's not a huge investment. But I mean, these people are making money. So what do you want to use the money on? Do you want to spend 20, 30 G's a month in Dubai, going to the club and buying stupid shit that you don't even need and rent the Lambo for a week or whatever, instead of investing into something that is going to make you more money, right? Because I think these people inside of their head, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I've gotten to 200K, 300K a month, so I might be able to scale to $1 million a month. I just need to do this, 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 and yeah, I talked to this guy and he said I need to do this, so I'll do this. And it's not as easy, right? You need to have a proper team. You need to have proper systems. You need to, if one of your hires is bad, you need to be able to fire them super fast. Have people in the pipeline, not only hire reactively, but hire proactively. Always have people in your pipeline, always have people in your ATS, so you're really able to hire, again, proactively, because like, okay, like in 2-3 months from now, we might need a creative strategist. In 2-3 months from now, we're going to open this market, so we need a translator, we need a proofreader, we need a video editor, and we need customer support in that respective language. So you need to hire proactively, because once you are doing that, you're able to move just so much faster. And you can translate, not translate as in from German to English, but translate as in taking the systems that you have and applying them to whatever you are going to move into, whether it is a new market or a new product, right? Because everything that you are doing, it needs to be replicable and it needs to be scalable. Because if it's not scalable, and then again, we're going back to product market fit and finding mass market appeal. If you're not able to find that, well, how do you want to scale? If you don't have an AOV of 10K, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And these are like really good questions. And for every business owner, for every e-com store owner that's watching or listening to this episode, just think about yourself. What are the main things that you're constantly repeating to yourself? Do you think that you have all of the answers all the time, or you're starting to question some stuff? Because starting to question some stuff and finding solutions is like the easiest way to solving those problems. And I've worked with many mentors into making sure that we're not always exactly those types of people that always have the answers. And it's one of the biggest keys into not failing really fastly with your e-com store. Because one day, like maybe in 2019, your product did have a good product market fit and it was a great timing. But then in 2 or 3 years, it might not be the case. For those businesses that made a really big push in like no time, in 6 months, in 12 months, they made millions. We did the same thing with our brand, with Blagovesta. But what would you recommend to those brands that maybe right now have found in the last 1.5 years, they found something and they tapped into a niche that might die off in a year as a trend? How do you translate a website from this into a business that works for a longer period of time?
It kind of goes back to when you're launching ads on Facebook, because if you have a creative that is dying, well, what is dying? Well, the creative has been seen by too many people, and there's something we call creative fatigue or ad fatigue, right? And what are you going to do? You're going to make iterations to that respective ad, whether it is by introducing a new hook, by introducing a new end card, by changing some B-roll within the entire footage, or just testing a new holistic concept instead of a new angle, right? So I don't think products or niches or anything is dying, provided you have these three things: mass market appeal, product, problem, solution, and people who are really hyping up your product, like people who are enthusiastic about that, right? And if it solves a problem and if it doesn't sell anymore, well, you need to find a new way on how to convey that problem and sell the benefits. You don't sell the features. You don't sell, 100% cotton. You sell, this resolves your back pain. This helps you with anxiety. This is going to make you, and you don't say, this helps you with anxiety. This says, now you're able to go outside. Now you're able to buy groceries. Now you're able to feel like a proper new man. Now you're able to get a new girlfriend. Now you're going to the bar and 10 girls are talking to you. Like, you always sell the end result. It's like info. You don't sell the product. You don't say, okay, and in my course we have 7 modules, and then you get 1 weekly. No, like, no one gives a fuck about that. They care about what you give them. like what the end result is, right? No one buys an info product because it has 7 or 8 modules or because you have 24/5 or 24/7 support. They care about what they are going to be at the end of the info product, which is, if we're talking about fitness, they're going to be shredded as fuck and they're going to have a 6-pack and they're going to look good. If we're talking about jaw sizer, they don't say, oh, your jaw is going to look good. They're like, oh, this is the before and after. And before you look like an idiot, and after you look like a masculine, like the most masculine version of yourself, right? So it's always like sell the end result and sell the benefits and not like the features, right? And it's the same with once you have something that is seemingly dying, it's not dying. You just need to iterate new concepts and really come up with something new that is speaking to a different audience or different persona, right? So you're kind of changing the product market fit, because it's exactly what you just said. Product market fit can change, but then the question is, how do we take what we have? How do we take all of the information? How do we take what the competitors are doing and all of the research and analysis that we've done and really put everything together into a new whole concept that is going to help to revive the brand?
Like, I'm going to make a small cut of this segment where you just discuss this, because this should be on repeat to every single e-com business owner. Like, literally, even from the whole episode, we've been streaming for more than 40 minutes now. But if you take those 2 minutes and you start to put them on repeat and you really think about what you just said, every single e-com business owner will have questions to their team. What are they actually doing? What are some success traits that you're seeing in e-com business owners? Like, what's differentiating? What are successful and unsuccessful people doing differently in the 7, 8, 9 figure e-com field?
Especially if we're talking about 8 to 9 figures. I haven't made 9 figures yet.
Okay.
Soon to come. But the way that I'm going to get there is by putting a team of just A players together and not having to fire people consistently because they're so shit, but having people that are going to execute and grow and are part of a culture inside of a company, right? Because, like, of course, what do people work for? For a job, for money, because they need to do something, right? They need to exist, they need to live, they need to financially support not only themselves, but also their family and everyone who's dependent on them, right? That's why people come to a company. Yeah. Potentially because you sell them the vision as well, but why do they stay? They don't stay because of the money. The money is a nice thing that they need, right? But they're going to stay because of the culture and the vision and everything that you're doing inside of the company. So this is number one. You need insanely good people. You need a team of A players. Second thing, systems and processes and hiring a proper C-level. If you don't have systems and processes in place, you're always trying to do things and you have to micromanage and no one knows what they're really doing inside of your team. And again, people are replaceable. Systems should not be replaceable. I can put anyone who, let's say there are 5 people who have the exact same qualification, or let's say there are 5 people who don't have the exact same qualification, but similar qualifications, right, and similar experiences. I can put all of these 5 people into a system, and they're all going to perform pretty much the same and pretty much as good as the system lets them to, right? Because the system kind of defines, well, the alley that they're walking on, the street that they're walking on, the vehicle that they are driving inside of, right? Because if I'm giving them shit systems, they're not going to be able to drive faster than a Ferrari, right? However, if I give them something, or let's say I give 2 cars that are exactly the same, and I give one systems and briefings on how to drive the car and give him instructions, who's going to be faster? Like, of course, the guy who's able to properly handle the Ferrari, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the second thing. First thing, A players, people, culture. Second thing, really making sure you have proper systems and everything that can be repeated and scalable. Again, because we don't need systems that are not scalable. If your systems are not scalable, they are shit. And some systems are just not scalable, which is fine, but you need to find a way on how you can really operate a system that could be scalable, right? Because not everything not everything is scalable. At some point, some things always have a cap, but you need to make sure that the cap is as high
It's high as possible. Yeah, it's
exactly.
in that regard, because everyone's repeating right now in the ecom world that you need systems, and not only in the ecom, in the whole business world, everyone's talking about systems in general. But as an agency owner myself as well, when I work with my clients, one of the things that I'm seeing is that they know that they need a system, but they have no idea how to build it. What are the first steps? Who are you hiring in order to get this? Like, what you should be looking for when building systems?
First of all, you need something to operate this system out of, which is a project management tool. I don't know what you guys are using. We're using ClickUp. We've tried everything. We've used Asana. We've used Monday. We just prefer ClickUp. We've been working with ClickUp for 1.5 years now, and in our opinion, it's the best. So this is what we're doing. You need to have that. You need to have something which is kind of like Notion, like a knowledge database where you can still put like things and kind of like employee handbooks and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you could also use something like an ATS, like Bamboo HR, and put all the employee handbooks there, job postings, all that stuff, right? So that's the third thing you need. Something where you centralize communication, which is going to be Slack for us. Some people use Microsoft Teams. We use Slack. We prefer Slack. You need internal storage, G Drive, Dropbox, whatever it is, right? You need to really define your tool stack. You need to make sure that you have an organizational chart so you really know who's working with who's responsible for what, which also, goes alongside with the ATS and really defining what role is executing on what and what they're responsible for. And what the tasks are that they have to do. If I am the CMO and I have a video editor, the video editor doesn't have anything, and let's say he has experience with Facebook ads, he doesn't have anything fucking to do inside of my ads manager.
Yeah.
To make it really obvious, right? But in order to really build good processes, people you can put in place are a project manager or an operations manager, whatever it is, right? And you need to start defining what you are doing. And how can you do that? Well, you do something very, very simple. You do a screen recording with Loom, or there's this other Chrome extension that I found, which is called Scribe. And essentially, you can just start clicking inside of your browser, doing something, and it's going to document every single step, everything that you've clicked, and going to write a text automatically on what you need to do, right? Which is nice. You need to document the entire process and what to do and how to do in Loom video in 20 minutes because no one cares and no one is going to remember, right? But if you have a small PDF, super simple. And then if you have essentially a small video or a text, another PDF, where you're explaining why this is relevant and why this is important, why it needs to be done that way, then people really understand, right? And when the systems get better is when people are starting to operate these systems and ask questions and really understand on how to operate it, and that some things are just not as productive and efficient as others. So the system might need to be changed, and then you're reworking your systems so that they are what? Scalable, exactly. So this is how you're really starting to build systems, to operate systems, and to scale the systems which are able to essentially scale your business at the end of the day, right? Because you really need to define on, first of all, what are we doing? What are the problems? And who's responsible for what, right? And if you really allocate team members to respective roles, to respective tasks, then you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly in what direction you're heading. And if there is a bottleneck, you know exactly why the bottleneck is there, who's responsible for it, and if they need assistance, if you need to hire a second person for that role. And a very simple example would be customer support right now. If there's thousands of tickets coming in and you have one person for customer support, it's not going to be sufficient. When you're going to notice that, when not all of the tickets are going to be answered, to put it very simple, right? And that's like kind of the tool stack and everything you need in order to be able to operate systems and scale, and ultimately, of course, scale your business and understand why you're not reaching the numbers that you want to, or what you need to do in order to move to that number, which is way more interesting.
Very, very nice. I think, again, gold for everyone that's like doing right now, because I'm literally seeing many different business owners that are not even having an Asana or not even having like ClickUp or whatever. It doesn't really matter. They have nothing. They don't communicate in the same place. Sometimes they even call each other when they need to do something, or they are still emailing between their employees. I'm like, wow, we're in the 21st century and we're still using email for internal communication. Like, that's never gonna work. Like, that's absolutely crazy. I wanted to ask you some questions that are really not that much in regard to the typical business, but no, but I know that many people are interested, and these are more blitz questions. So, what are the top 5 marketing people that you would recommend for people to follow online? For if you're in the e-commerce world, who are the top 5 people you're recommending to follow for great content and knowledge?
Nick Shackelford, for sure.
Okay.
The other guy I'm going to mention, he doesn't really do e-com, but he's crazy and he's doing 9 figures a year. He's 28. He has a payment processor and everything. He has a lot of equity in other personal brands. His name is Raoul Plicat. That's the second guy.
Excuse me, can you repeat him?
Raoul Plicat. German
Okay.
guy.
Nice.
Man, let me think who I would suggest.
We're at 2. We
No.
need to get more. We need to share knowledge in this podcast.
Of course, Davey Fogarty. for
Okay.
Sure. Then
It's okay. It's okay. We can think later about more people. Let's say if we turn the question into...
well, I know a guy. I know another
Yeah.
guy. Christian Hoppe, underrated. He's very, very big on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Good friend of mine. And then shameless self-plug, I guess.
Follow
So
Jem.
we have 5.
Follow Jem. Follow Jem for more information on how to scale your business. But yeah, but why not? What are the sources of information that you're using mainly? Like, what are your favorite websites or accounts that you're following, or like big companies that you're following for updates?
Yeah, Twitter for sure. Just check out who I'm following. I think that's the easiest because there's a lot of gold on Twitter, especially on money Twitter. On LinkedIn, not really too busy, but LinkedIn has amazing information if you're following the right people. I'm following Stacked Marketer, the newsletter, which is great. And well, I'm inside of a lot of Discords, but I'm not really active there. I have my own masterminds, I guess. I mean, Geek Out or Geek X now is amazing, an amazing event. Affiliate World, Ad World is something you can attend for sure. But I mean, I have my friends, I have my own kind of small communities, you know, and it's not like we're exchanging every day, but like whenever I need something, and
You know who to ask.
I know exactly who to ask, exactly, and then they're just going to help me out, and yeah, simple as that.
Very nice. What are your favorite books on that you're reading lately?
Right now, I'm reading Psycho-Cybernetics for probably the 5th time. It's my all-time favorite book. Compound Effect, amazing book as well. Over Deliver, great book. And then Breakthrough Advertising for sure.
Very nice stock, a stack of books.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Power of Now, also good book. And like classics, you know, like Cash Advertising.
That's so good. Like that's so great. Very nice. In that regard, who do you want to see on the Markademics podcast next? Who are the people that you think that should bring more value into the episodes?
Damn, I think Christian Hoppe, honestly.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
he doesn't have a following on Twitter. He has a kind of big following on LinkedIn. He was the ex-head of online of Waterdrop, and he was responsible for scaling the company pretty much to 80 million a year.
Okay.
Yeah. So he would be an amazing fit because, like, I talk to this guy and I feel stupid, you know? Sometimes I feel like I know somewhat in marketing, and then I talk to this guy and I feel like an idiot. I feel like, what the fuck have I been doing with my entire life?
And that's the best feeling in the world, because you're like, okay, now I'm learning.
Yeah, then you know you're talking with the right people, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to feel stupid more times. Like that, if there's like if there's an advice that we can give to everyone is like just feel stupid more times. Like the more you feel stupid, the more you're growing. Because if
Yeah.
you're the best person always in the room or in your environment, something's really shitty right now. Like
Yeah.
that's a huge red flag.
No shame in feeling stupid, honestly.
Absolutely. It's probably the greatest feeling in the world when you know that you're growing this way. And something that's outside of it's still connected to the e-commerce world, but many people are using agencies, and you know very well that there is a negative connotation when it comes to agencies in the like not only in the e-commerce world but in the business world as well.
Especially if we're talking about these newly growth partners. Man, fuck. What I've seen on Twitter, it's crazy. People are like, because like whatever they're posting, it only revolves around money and never client success or results or anything. They're just like, oh, just change your pricing model and then you're a growth partner and then you're gonna make 100K. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it's not a sustainable business.
Yep. How if you're because you both have agencies and you both have e-com stores. How are you picking agencies if you're an e-com store? Like, what are the ways that you can, yeah, make like work with a good agency compared to a bad one?
Yeah, first of all, they need to be doing what they're doing for some time, or they can be new, which is fine, but they need to have results in whatever they have been doing, right? Especially if we're talking about hiring someone who just started a UGC agency, but you know he's been the head of UGC for a big company before, then that's totally fine because you
Yeah.
know what he's doing and he knows exactly what he needs to do for your brand, right? So either great track record of results or great experience beforehand. Then ask for some clients they're working with right now. Ask for some previous clients. Maybe just go to their website and see what they're doing. See, ask how big their team is. Ask for their pricing structure, if it's transparent, if it doesn't make sense. Because there's a lot of price discrimination, especially in the agency space, where
Oh
people
yeah.
are like, oh, and then again, you see this on Twitter sometimes. They're like, oh, I didn't want to work with that guy, and I said 50K, and he said yes, and now I have this client. Like, fuck, like that. That's what I'm reading sometimes.
Crazy. It's
I'm
really
just shocked,
crazy.
Uh, especially, and that's probably the biggest scam, email agencies that are charging percentage of the revenue that they've generated, because email is a channel that you own, right? You
Yeah.
own all of your customers, and they're not bringing in any new traffic. They're just monetizing the list that you have and the list that you've acquired with money. So that's also a huge red flag. Also, like, ask how the process is going to look like, and how, just ask for the first 3 months. If they're making horrendous guarantees, for example, oh, we're going to double, triple your ROAS, right? Some self-confidence is never too bad. However, I'd rather promise something I can hold very, very easily, and of course do some expectation setting, but then just over-deliver.
Yeah.
Because if you promise here and you deliver here, client is going to be super happy and they're not going to churn, at
Yeah.
least for some time. If you're promising here and the agency is delivering here, like, man,
You're
fuck are
you're
you
done.
doing?
You're done.
Like,
Even if you're doing a good job
you're
compared to what you could have. Like even if you're doing a good job, if you overpromised, that's it. You're done.
for sure.
It's quite interesting because when I first started an agency and then I started my own e-commerce stores, and I always thought that e-com stores are really like they're not spending enough on agencies, that they're like that they're trying to rip off basically agencies, or that was my experience, because they were always negotiating with pricing regardless of what pricing I was giving. And then when I became an e-com store owner, when we grew to 7 figures,
You did the
and I was
same
like,
thing.
I don't want to pay these agencies that much. Like, I don't want to. Like, I know how it's managed, and I know that, okay, sometimes I need just a freelancer. I don't really need an agency. What I would put as a red flag is if the agency is just providing you one person, that's like a randomly good it could be a nice person, but it's just providing you one person that you could have gotten as a freelance guy from somewhere. Like, just don't work with them. That's it. Like, you can find a
sure.
freelancer with
For sure,
for
for sure.
probably 3 times less money. If the agency is holding the knowledge that you actually need, and it has the team and capacity and all of that, then it's a great one.
For sure.
Very nice. Because we're just entering the 1 hour mark on our podcast, and I don't want to take more of your time. What would you say, lastly, to everyone that's doing right now e-commerce? What are the biggest things that you think will start to happen in our industry in the next 1 to 2 years?
I've mentioned this small buzzword before. I've said AGC. Barely anyone knows what agency is, and it's still relatively new. But it's actor-generated content. Because if you think about it, or even having content production knows. But anyways, if you think about it, who is able, same price, right? Let's say you're sending them $150 for each creative. Let's say you have a UGC creator who does it, who's done it before, who's doing it good, and then you have AGC, an actor, with someone who's not. We're not talking about Johnny Depp or someone, right? We're just talking about an actor who does creatives for a living, and you can go on Backstage or Stage Pool. These are two websites where you can find amazing actors, or you can even organize your own casting on your local job website, whatever it is. Yeah. Indeed, LinkedIn, doesn't matter. But anyways, if we're talking about UGC and AGC, same price, who do you think is going to convey the message better within the creative, right?
That's quite interesting, because people were starting to get out of the actually actor-generated content years ago, and that's how UGC got created, because it was starting to put more trust. But now, since UGC is so mainstream, it's not having the same effect in terms of trust factor, because people are like, yeah, they've just paid for a random guy or influencer to be speaking in front of a camera. And now what you're saying is that, exactly because of that, actors are now like back in work.
I wouldn't say necessarily because of that. I'd say because UGC has gotten so popular, everyone and their fucking mom and their fucking dog is trying to become a UGC content creator. Yeah. Because they think, I get free products and I take videos for $200-$300. Like sometimes I'm getting quotes for UGC and I'm like I've seen your portfolio and I've seen your quote. Like, how the fuck does that make sense, right? And at the end of the day, the market is going to regulate itself, because that's what's going to happen. All of these UGC creators that are going to be shit, they're going to get churned. They're going to not be able to land jobs and gigs and everything, right? But in my opinion, in order to have relevant content, not relevant, because at the end of the day, you always need to split test, and someone who's doing it shit could still perform better than someone who's doing it proper, I guess, right? But generally speaking, this is something that is hot and is coming up right now because of the reasons I've mentioned, just because they are actors. And of course, they need to say what they do, and they can emphasize certain situations just better than some college kid, right?
Yeah.
Organic is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, especially TikTok, YouTube Shorts, everything, that kind of stuff. CRO has been a topic that last year everyone has been talking about on Twitter, and their mom again has started a CRO agency.
Everyone's now a CRO expert.
Yeah,
everyone's a CRO expert.
People don't even know what statistical significance is and how to really do multi-arm bandit testing, or even have the tools for it. Because I know that we have paid, I think, 22,000 euros for a tool for a year, just to be able to do more than 5 tests a year. More than 5 tests at a time with a client. These agencies don't even make 20K a month.
Yeah.
But that set aside, like AGC is a thing coming up, CRO is a thing coming up, and I feel like WhatsApp marketing is a big thing in Germany right now. I know there's one agency and one tool. The tool is called Charles. Their quotes are horrendous. Because we got quotes from them. The quotes are horrendous. They don't make any sense. I understand that there are certain fees connected to the API of WhatsApp, yeah. But the fees that they are charging, they're just fucked up, and they haven't even replied to the last email. And they raised 20 million, by the way. So I'm not too sure if I would recommend them. Based off from my experience, I'd say they're a fucking shitty ass tool. Just because of their support, but that's something that is very, very hot and upcoming. So if anyone there, a SaaS founder, wants to do something like Klaviyo, but for WhatsApp, then this is
And
this is your
that's gonna
message.
be huge then.
Market is untapped, and it's going to fucking explode. Because, and again, this is like same thing when we've been talking about where are the differences between the EU and US. In the US, if you don't have iMessage, everyone is fucking bashing you. Oh, you have WhatsApp, right?
Yeah.
Same thing in Europe. If people in the US are in Europe and they don't have WhatsApp, well, no one is using fucking iMessage in Europe, but everyone uses WhatsApp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are like, again, this is like one certain thing where no one sends SMS in Europe. So SMS bump will not work in Germany, but SMS bump will work in the US.
In the US, and the
then
prices
again-
are completely different in the
For sure.
sending prices in SMS Bump. It's a Bulgarian company, so that's why I love them. I need to invite them to the podcast. They were recently bought by Yotpo,
I
so
think for
they
80
got
million or
acquired.
something, if I remember.
It was a really nice one. It was one of the bigger ones, especially for our market because we're a small country with a limited e-commerce society. But it's growing, and SMS Bump were like the absolute leaders in that category.
Yeah, but definitely like another opportunity and a third trend that is upcoming in Europe, at least.
Absolutely. Well, Jem, absolutely. Thank you for your time and the shared knowledge and value. I think it's again going to be quite substantial for everyone doing e-commerce, from the ones that are starting out, from the ones that are right now being backed by venture by VCs, from the one absolutely, and how not to get fucked up there. For the ones that are right now thinking of new product lines and are entering new markets, to everyone who has an e-com store and is looking to get an agency. You really got information. You really put value for each and every one of those categories. So thank you very much for this, and thank you for joining the episode.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
No.